So go ahead and find your posture for meditation. You want a nice upright spine with relaxed shoulders, relaxed belly. Just let your belly fall. Your feet can be squarely on the floor. Your seat, feel your seat on your chair. And begin to notice your in-breath and your out-breath. And if your mind wanders, just go ahead and bring it back to the awareness of your breathing. We'll use the breath as our anchor to the present moment. In and out. Enjoy. Next, we'll enjoy our walking meditation. And in practicing meditation of this kind, we leave part of our awareness on our in-breath and out-breath and move most of our awareness into our feet. And we're not going anywhere. There's no reason to rush. So with each step, we can breathe in. And then on the next step, breathe out. And this is a way of taking our mindful awareness into movement through the day. And we may want to say a short poem. With our in-breath and our first step, we might want to say yes. And on the next step, an out-breath, we may want to say thank you. Yes, thank you. And I have a different kind of bell. I'll invite one sound of the bell and we'll rise, and we'll, on the second sound of the bell, we'll bow to one another. And on the third sound of the bell, we'll begin our walking meditation. And you may just want to kind of look at your space here and decide where it is that you're going to step. And then I'll also invite the bell when it's time to come back and do our final bow. Our second meditation will be a guided meditation. So you want to find your posture again and bring your awareness to your breathing. I'll invite the bell. Breathing in, I'm aware of my thoughts. Breathing out, I let go of my thoughts without attachment. In, aware of thoughts. Out, letting go. Breathing in, I see my thoughts like clouds reflecting on the calm lake of my being. Breathing out, I smile as the clouds blow by. In, thoughts like clouds. Out, blowing by. Breathing in, I see my thoughts in this very present moment. Breathing out, I relax. In, present moment thoughts. Out, relax. Breathing in, I make space for the possibility of no thoughts. Breathing out, I relax into no thoughts so I can be. Breathing in, no thoughts. Breathing out, being. Dear friends, I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that? Thumbs up? Excellent. All right. Well, I was really moved by these mindfulness trainings that were written by Marisela Gomez and Valerie Brown, two women of color that I've had the opportunity to work with. And they're part of the Arise Sangha, which is something that I sent you a link to last week about awakening to the intersectionality of race and justice. And they've created a version of the Five Mindfulness Trainings, which I know you're aware is the foundation of the Plum Village practice, the foundation of our ethical practice. And what I'd like to do, I have some volunteers that are willing to read this with me, but I'd like to just go through it and read it clearly and slowly so we can take it in and hear what it is that the insights in particular about racial justice at this time of the global pandemic. And here, embedded in this, some suggestions for how we might practice, bring our mindful awareness to the challenges of these times. So I will begin by reading the introduction, and then we'll have the first training, and then I'll invite the sound of the bell, and there'll be a pause, and then we'll do the second training. So we'll take our time with this. This is not a formal recitation, but this is something that we want to just really absorb as we go through it. So our friends say, let us open to a new and deeper way of understanding the Five Mindfulness Trainings, guiding principles for mindful and ethical living, which call us towards individual and collective awakening, compassion, and peace. We are aware that we are interconnected. What happens in Wuhan, China, affects people in New York City. We are called forward. The global pandemic is a gateway to suffering worldwide, disproportionately impacting Black people, Indigenous, and people of color who face poverty, sickness, displacement, and death. They, we, are not alone. Our lives and livelihoods are interconnected. We are called forward. We cannot exist independent of low-wage workers, healthcare workers, unhoused people, single mothers, undocumented people, the unemployed and underemployed. If one such person lives on the knife edge of racial, ethnic, social, structural, and systemic oppression and discrimination, we are all affected. We are called forward. The practitioner dwells in the now, recognizing equanimity and instability, discrimination and non-discrimination, ill-being and well-being, practicing right view and engaged through compassionate action. Aware of the cycle of racial, ethnic, and social inequities and discrimination, we courageously turn to practice wholeheartedly. We are called forward. Lighting a stick of incense, listening to the sutras, sitting upright and solid, palms joined, the practitioner looks within and, in concentration, the path and fruit of skillful action is revealed. We are called forward. Speak aloud these words with the sangha voice. a true river of understanding.
The first mindfulness training, acknowledging beauty as reverence for life, aware of the suffering caused by oppression and generational harm based on racial, cultural, social, and ethnic inferiority and superiority, and its resultant structures of injustices and harm. I acknowledge the beauty and violence inherent in life. I vow to resist being complicit in systems and structures that continue to perpetrate violence and hatred instead of reverence of life for marginalized groups. I recognize that each person contributes to my individual and our collective awakening and the co-creation of a world that celebrates and affirms differences and similarities. All living things can teach me something when I remember to pause, breathe, listen deeply with a calm and open mind and heart, and ask myself, is there more? Or what else is here with me? I honor and respect all life guided by right view and right energy.
The second mindfulness training, belonging and connecting as true happiness. Aware of the suffering caused by ignorance and aversion of my own and others' racial, ethnic, cultural, and social history, its legacy and how this affects me, whether I am aware of it or not, I am committed, I am committed to connecting to these histories. I know that turning toward these histories with an open heart is my journey of awakening into true belonging. I will take the time to learn the history of the racial and ethnic group with which I identify, as well as for other socially constructed racial and ethnic groups. Aware that there is no genetic and biological difference between different racial and ethnic groups, and that these identities were constructed by one group to establish dominance over others, I will turn toward racial and other forms of othering with an open heart and compassionate action. I know that this history has led to fragmentation inside and outside body and mind, and brought much suffering to all human beings. I vow to transform this suffering through the practice of connecting with an open heart. I will notice when emotions of belonging and othering arise, and I will ask myself why. Whatever feelings, perceptions, or mental formations arise, I will embrace and, when needed, engage with love in action. I am committed to practicing right resolve, right speech, right action, and right livelihood so I can help relieve this legacy of racial and social suffering. I will practice looking deeply to see that true happiness is not possible without true connecting, leading to belonging and understanding.
The third mindfulness training, cherishment as true love. Aware of the suffering caused by discrimination and oppression, I vow to understand its roots within my consciousness and my body and the collective body of the sangha and larger society. I vow to recognize the ways in which I have benefited or not benefited, explicitly or implicitly, from systems and structures that foster discrimination and injustice. I'm aware of the legacy of violence, especially unlawful police violence, perpetrated against Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, differently abled people, people of various gender identities and expressions and sexual orientations, and others who are marginalized. I acknowledge the lived experience of all people to deepen my capacity for understanding and for greater compassionate action. I am aware that narrowly constructed, prevalent interpretations of intimate relationships constrain how we cherish each other in our expression of love, leaving many further isolated and alienated. I am committed to looking tenderly at my suffering, knowing that I am not separate from others, and that the seeds of suffering contain the seeds of joy. I am not afraid of bold love that fosters justice and belonging, and tender love that seeks peace and connection. I cherish myself and my suffering without discrimination. I cherish this body and mind as an act of healing for myself and for others. I cherish this breath. I cherish this moment. I cherish the liberation of all beings guided by the wisdom and solidity of the sangha. This is the path of true love.
The fourth mindfulness training, vulnerability as loving speech and deep listening. Aware that vulnerability is the essence of our true nature, our humanness, I vow to risk listening and speaking non-judgmentally with understanding and compassion to alleviate suffering and support peace in myself and others. I vow to live with empathy, compassion, and awareness, and to listen for understanding rather than disagreement. When I've hurt others through my unskillful action or speech, I vow to practice making a good apology that acknowledges what I have done and others' sincere regret, knowing that this supports the other person and me. I am committed to speaking that aligns with my highest aspiration and encourages honesty and truthfulness. I am committed to generous and courageous listening that bridges differences and supports understanding of others who may be different from me. I am committed to taking meaningful steps to become a true instrument of peace and to help others to be the same. When I am not able to understand the experiences of others, I vow to come back to my breath and my body and to offer myself gentle patience while learning to support myself in developing greater awareness and skill. I vow to practice awareness of my beliefs, perceptions, and feelings, aversions, and desires, and to take refuge in mindful breathing and in the sangha to support greater stability, peace, and understanding. Through my practices of vulnerability, patience, forgiveness, and deeply listening, I know that my speech will be guided by love and understanding. Practicing this way supports right speech and right action and guides me to right insight.
The fifth mindfulness training, welcoming as true nourishing and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by the consumption of an inadequate history of racial and ethnic forms of social segregation, I am committed to healing myself and the world by welcoming and practicing this awareness. I will notice how my thoughts, perceptions, feelings, words, and actions may have been influenced by this inaccurate history. I will look deeply to understand how both physical and mental health for myself, my family, and my society have been influenced by embracing and denying this racial, social, and ethnic history of inferiority and superiority and its legacy of inequities and injustices. I will cultivate joy to support me toward individual and collective wholeness. I will practice mindfulness of the four kinds of nutrients to become aware of how edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness are all influenced by this history. Practicing with right energy and right resolve, my right action of consumption will include awareness of certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations, and how they continue to foster wrong perceptions of racial, ethnic, and social injustices. My understanding of inner being supports my conscious consumption that sustains a healthy understanding of differences, one that does not oppress or discriminate. This right insight will preserve peace, joy, and bring healing in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth. To assure that my descendants do not live in a racially, ethnically, and socially unjust world, I commit to diligently practicing with true welcoming on this path to nourish and heal myself, the sangha, and society.
The five mindfulness trainings keeps us centered in life's storms and joys and reminds us that life is a precious gift. The trainings are a path to liberation and transformation. Practicing these trainings supports us towards racial and ethnic reconciliation and social change and heals deep suffering. The five mindfulness trainings helps us cross this shore of suffering and brings us to the other side of true awakening and love. So friends, I want to thank those who supported the reading by offering your voices. And I'd like to now open the floor for sharing. There's been a lot that has been happening in our world. I am very grateful to our sisters who prepared this these mindfulness trainings because of the way that they framed our capacity to hold both the pain and the joy. the way that they invite us to look deeply and to work with these awarenesses that are beginning to come into our consciousness, or that have been there all along and are finally now being recognized by others. So perhaps there's something that has been coming up for you in the last week, or perhaps there's something that has touched you in this reading that you'd like to share. And if you'd like to share, just go ahead and bow in, and you'd say something like, "This is Heather bowing in," and then you'll have the floor for as long as you need to express your what's in your heart. And then when you're feeling complete, you can bow out. So this is Heather bowing out. Thank you.
This is Chris bowing in. We cannot let go of this moment. We have to keep this alive and going. There's so much energy across the world for the potential for change now. This is our best chance in all of history to make a change. I used to think that now that I'm 68 years old, I have done my protesting, and it is time for the younger people to march. But now is the time for me to get back out there. And I want to recommend a book that I'm reading, How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibrahim X. Kendi. And I'll write that out in the chat so that you can find it. It's available on Amazon. My heart has always been broken over this. And here in this sangha, we're looking deeply. We know, we understand, we collectively want together as one for the change. Make your signs. Find out where the protests are. Line up and put as much energy as you are able into working for this change. Chris, bowing out.